So good evening friends, welcome back to my channel The Retail Guru. I hope you've been enjoying the series this week I thought let's talk about e-commerce. The whole world has literally got their underwears in a twist because of the growth of e-commerce, the death of offline stores. So I thought let's put some evidence behind if there is any truth to these facts that online retail is taking over offline retail. So with that, let's get started. So let's start with some statistics. In the developed world, about 15% of the retail sales are done through the online channel. In the GCC, it's anywhere between 4 to 6%, and in a place like India, it's about 1.4%. So you can see that there is a long way to go. It tells you that at least 85% of the sales are still coming through the offline channels, so offline is definitely not dead. Of course, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind when you're talking about the growth of e-commerce. It's got to do with technology overall, because you're talking about three essential ingredients that drive e-commerce. The first thing is broadband, where countries have to provide good broadband connections to customers so that they can go online. That's the premise for it. The second thing is smartphone penetration is also very important. Smartphone penetration in your respective country will determine the growth of e-commerce. If you see countries like the United Arab Emirates, smartphone penetration is as much as 99%, and users spend approximately 6 hours on their phone. And the third driver is social media. So these are the three levers that you talk about when you look at the potential of each country, where e-commerce is in the journey in each country and how they are moving in terms of growth. Another thing that drives growth of e-commerce in countries is the generations. When I talk about generations, I'm talking about the various blocks of generations that have evolved over the period of years. You have the baby boomers, you've got generation X, you have generation Y, and now generation Z. When it comes to baby boomers, this is the generation that is seeing retirement at this stage. You have generation X, which is people like me who are in their mid-40s, and we are in the throes of our career. Then you've got the millennials who have just entered the workforce, who are very socially adept and high on technology. And then you've got the digital natives, who are essentially generation Z. This is the Disney Channel child and the iPad child who were born with it, and rather than milk in the hand, they would hold an iPad in the hand, and this is what you would call the generation that is the most digitally savvy. When you talk about organizations, you look at retail players who have been primarily online, and you look at some of them who are being primarily offline. This is what is called Pureplay, where you are either online or offline. But over the past 10 years, you've seen companies, especially offline companies, investing hugely in their own e-commerce sites as a representation to strengthen their brand, to get to more customers out there, and to drive sales. So what I've seen is that in the past 5 to 7 years, a lot of companies have invested hugely in having an omni-channel presence, which is your virtual and your online, and how you marry the two is finally what will determine your success. And most people said, let's have an online strategy as a backup. But once the pandemic hit, things have really taken a drastic turn. You saw that a lot of the essential items like toilet rolls, grocery items went and skyrocketed in terms of their sales. You had many organizations that had never had the infrastructure to cope with this growth of online. And while online grew in certain offline organizations from 5% of their overall sales to as much as 15 to 20%, it was a shock to the system because they never had the infrastructure to carry out fulfillment of those orders, and they could have also tarnished their reputation in the process. I know of two specific companies in the GCC which probably bit off more than they could chew. They had a very good digital presence, but they were not able to fulfill a lot of their deliveries And if you go and look at some of the reviews that they got online, there was a tremendous backlash. So you may have a 500 to 1000% growth due to the pandemic. The questions you need to ask yourself is, are you ready? Do you have the last mile connectivity to be able to deliver products to your customer within the time frame that you're promising? And these are a lot of tough questions that retailers have had to answer in a very short space. So let's get down to some brass tacks. What is it that actually makes e-commerce thrive? The first thing that comes to mind is pricing. It is a pricing war and nothing more. If you saw Amazon, they killed Toys R Us because of pricing. So Amazon is that engine which is basically able to price under the competition and grab market share. And that's what e-commerce in essence is all about. It's about pricing. If you can price your products lesser than the competition, you have a customer and you are a winner. Another thing to think about when you're looking at e-commerce and online is the fact that you don't have a lot of infrastructure cost, or rather definitely not as much as you'd see in the offline. So in terms of all these additional overheads that you have if you're an offline business, these additional overheads that you won't have because you've moved on to the online channel can be diverted into getting more higher quality products at a cheaper price delivered to your customers in a quicker speed of time. Besides pricing, another very important thing to think about if you're an e-commerce player is the last mile delivery. And what is last mile delivery? It's essentially the transportation of the goods from the warehouse to the customer. And there are certain deal breakers or clinchers to this last mile delivery, and let's find out what they are. So a very important element when we look at last mile delivery is the speed of the delivery, and that is actually the deal breaker. Most of the people of the younger generation want things to happen instantly, whether it is coffee, whether it is dating, whether it is food. Everything has to happen within the hour at the click of a button. And that is why when you're looking at driving your e-commerce business, same day delivery or delivery within the next 6 hours is paramount to success. When I talk about deliveries and speed of delivery, let's talk about a live example. So a couple of days back I needed an inhaler for my mom as she has some congestion issues, and I went online on Amazon and I looked at various delivery times, and I looked at suppliers who have basically listed themselves onto Amazon. Of course, quality is paramount when you're looking at an item like an inhaler, but you're also looking at speed of delivery. And there were certain suppliers that were able to deliver in 24 hours, certain suppliers in a couple of days, and some going as much as a week. Now you take a guess and tell me, what was I looking for? So besides quality, I was also looking for a 24-hour delivery. And the people who were able to do that are the people who got the business. So if you take that from my experience into the real world, speed of delivery is really important. Another very important thing to keep in mind is your payments. How are you able to fulfill these payments when you deliver? Is it going to be through channels like credit cards, UPI engines, cash on delivery? Cash on delivery plays a very important part in e-commerce, and the reason is when I spoke about generations and generation gaps and the ability for generations to adapt to the new normal, I was specifically talking about the baby boomers and Generation X. These are the people who are very skeptical about using digital mode of payments, and if you want to grab that section of customers, then cash on delivery is a very important tool to have. So if you're an e-commerce site, you're looking to grab people who are in their 40s and above, then you need to have cash on delivery as one of the modes of your payments, or you will lose out on that segment of customers. So now that we've spoken a little more on e-commerce and the growth of online, what is next for the GCC? Is offline going to die? Now let's understand one thing, the climate. The climate in the GCC is uninhabitable for at least 8 months of the year. You've got 4 months where you can have barbecues, social get-togethers, concerts, stuff like that that you would be able to do in a normal country. But in the GCC, the weather is extremely hot, very humid, always closing 50 degrees, and there is no other form of entertainment other than people going to malls, or what you would call malling. So there is no fear in the GCC, or there should be no fear in the GCC that offline retail will die anytime soon. It is here to stay. Thank you for coming back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you at the next.